I'm Ryan. This is my brother Daniel. This is Rolls in the Family, and we are excited today because today we are talking about our top 10 games of all time. We've been in the modern board gaming hobby for probably, 15 years now, pretty heavily down the rabbit hole, and these are the 10 that at this point in time, cream of the crop for our personal tastes. We also are excited because in this video, we are going to be giving away some of our favorite games to 3 lucky winners that have entered over the past 4 videos in this series. If you're just watching this now, we are sorry that you missed the entry period for this, though we do intend to do these types of things in the future. So subscribe to the channel if you want to forget about us for next year. But we will be doing that at 3 points throughout this video. We're going to select those winners in this video. The winners will end up getting an email a few days after this video is released the next week. So hopefully you can find out if you won through the video. It's more exciting that way than getting an email, right? So we'll be doing that. The links to all these games, these great games, I emphasize that these are, very good games.
These
links are all down in the description below. You can check them out for yourself. But we're going to jump into it with Daniel's number 10.
Oh boy, Ryan, things are getting spicy today. We've got some good stuff here. I'm excited. I feel like this is going to be the video where people really get our raw reactions of maybe shock at reacting because we don't know each other's list at all. So so we'll see how this goes. But starting off at my number 10 is the highest new game on my list, coming in at number 10. I don't know if you have a guess that comes to mind, but my number 10 is going to go to Nemesis.
Yes.
Yeah, Nemesis.
I should have known.
Got it this last year, and I was excited because I've always played those semi-cooperative games. For us, it started out with Battlestar Galactica. We had a lot of fun with that. Then we kind of moved from that to Dead of Winter, and I had Dead of Winter for a while. And it was fun, but I always just had an issue with semi-cooperative, this whole, you're either completely good or completely bad. And specifically my problem in actually Dead of Winter was that the game's really hard already. And so if everyone's good, you still might lose. But if someone's bad, it's just hopeless. And so that was kind of how I felt. So I was just kind of looking for a game that could deliver just an awesome semi-cooperative feel. And man, Nemesis just knocks it out of the park. This game delivers one of the best thematic, just like you feel the theme as you're playing because you're on this team that's running around this ship filled with aliens, which first of all, the production quality, the miniatures just sometimes it's like, why did they need to make a miniature that big? But in this game, it feels appropriate because they're just they're wanting to give you this just terrifying feel as you're scrambling around the ship. And the whole mechanics where as you're moving around the ship, you're creating noise, and noise creates better chances of an alien coming out at you. And there's even noise can travel through the air ducts. And so noise made in one area could potentially trigger an alien coming in a different area. And so that's a really fun mechanic. And it just creates a thematic feel that is honestly, it's like scary but in like a good way. In like this, you're like, oh my gosh, okay, here we go. You try to stay in pairs. So that already is fun. But then I mentioned it's got this semi-cooperative element, but I love how it does it because it's not just, oh, hey, you 3 are good, and then, oh, I'm the traitor. But everyone has, the kind of main win condition and there's kind of a few ways that can happen. But you also get dealt your own personal win condition, and you actually get dealt 2. And then when the first alien comes out or something like that, everyone then has to decide which one they're going to go with. And they're not 100. They're not like make the whole team lose necessarily. Maybe there is one, but it's they're all nuanced, and like they're, you want this specific thing to happen. And there is one that's like, kill the yellow player, or not kill, but let the yellow player dies. And so there's just, you can't really fully trust everyone, but you also have to, because the game is really hard. So you're like trusting people, but you're always in the back of your mind, like watching suspiciously of like, what are people doing? This is the game that I think I'm still yet to play it fully correctly. I've broken drastic rules every time I've played and realized that it's made the game easier. So I think this game's going to be really, really hard playing it going forward. But man, delivering that just thematic alien running around the ship cooperative feel with this like semi-cooperative element. I have had so much fun playing Nemesis this last year. Got to play it once with you.
Yeah, I was glad to get to try it. Who knows how many rules we got right in that game, but we had some egregious rule breaks, right?
It
was a good time though. It was a good time though. It is such a big epic game, and it's interesting because you talked about Dead of Winter, how sometimes it felt like it was so hard even if you didn't have a trader. I think Nemesis is still that similar in that regard.
It's really hard,
but it manages to do it in a way that's much more kind of like memorable. Like if you're going to have a game that really you just really die, which can happen in a Nemesis.
Yeah.
And like no one's even close to winning. The narrative it does ends up being a fun experience. And I think it does a good job of that. It's not for everybody for sure.
That's such a great point. Yeah. You have to go into the game being totally fine with, I might just completely get wrecked, but it's the story. And there's almost, I find when we're playing it and horrible things are happening and, a super unlucky things happens and the queen drops on you. I mean, we're just laughing. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It creates this almost comical as you're watching this just horror story happen. And if you happen to win, it's crazy exciting. The reveal at the end where everyone reveals, because you don't know. And even the exciting thing where you can get all the way to the end, but then it's those infection. Remember those infection cards that you have to check, and you don't know. You might be clear, you might not. Man, Nemesis is really cool. I know they've come out with obviously Lockdown. They have another one coming out. Yeah. I would love if I could just get more characters and stuff like that. But Nemesis has been an absolute joy. Love it.
Very
there
nice.
You go. My number 10.
Good stuff. My number 10 is kind of in a similar vein, or a kind of similar niche in the collection, probably. This is one that we have been playing for a long time. It has been a staple in my top 10. This is the lowest it's dropped. It is,
this would be actually a little surprising.
To 10, but this is Eldritch Horror.
Wow.
And Eldritch Horror is a hard game. It's always a hard game to exactly rank, because it's one of these games that's this big cooperative sandbox of this globe-trotting horror mystery solving, and there's so many random elements in it. Like every thing you're doing on your turn, like your what's the word? The encounter for the turn.
Yeah.
You're almost always rolling dice to resolve based on your statistics, and like the cards that come up are complete. And so it's very swingy, and we've talked about this. We reviewed Eldritch Horror and talk about a lot of how it's so swingy, but yet that is part of the reason why we love it so much, is because it has this potential to swing so far into amazing moments and amazing comebacks. My most recent game of Eldritch is probably a really good example of just like my feelings of it and why it's hard to rank. It was this game where 3 hours in, I'm thinking, this game of Eldritch is kind of dragging a little bit. Like the middle got a little long. It'd be nice if we could kind of get to the end here. We did not think we were going to win. We were very behind. But then the last 20 minutes was us making this amazing comeback and like doing this, and we end up like defeating. And so the end was such a high, like, and so it's like, man, the same game. At one point, I'm thinking it'd be nice to get this over with and move on to some other games. Another moment, I'm going, this is like one of the most amazing things I've had happen in a board game. Yeah. And so, it ends up landing very high to me because I've played it so much and had enough of those high moments that it's, the times where it doesn't land as well, I'm willing to forgive for the opportunity for those amazing moments. So still love it. It's not really like I guess it's the type of cooperative game that we tend to like, which is like hard and lots of variety and stuff.
Yeah, lots of variability.
But
yeah.
I often, when I've done these lists in the past, people are often surprised to see this game up this high for me among some of the other games I have, just because a lot of my other games seem like they're not the type of games that somebody would also really like Eldritch Horror.
Yeah.
But we've had so much fun with it. We started with Arkham Horror 2nd edition way back. And I mean, this is in the early days where we didn't have that many games and we were both living at home together, played them a lot. I mean, we played Arkham over 50 times, and this is like a 3-hour game.
Yeah.
Have Eldritch now. I think I've played Eldritch 40 times. So a lot of good quality time spent with it, and still holds on here at my number 10.
Yeah, it is a tough game to rank, because do you go off the best experiences it delivers, but you also have to account for, you just sometimes have those just, wow, that was horrible.
And it's been a group favorite. Like, that's another huge factor here, is my gaming group that typically plays
loves to demand it.
Loves this game.
Ryan's always the one and like, no, let's play something else.
It's like, we played it recently. We got to get some other things.
Yeah, there's something to be said. The group's always demanding it. So there you go. Crowd favorite. Okay. Nice stuff, Ryan. My number 9 goes to, I think by far the game that I've invested the most money into. Also a game I have not played in a very long time, but absolutely love it. And this goes to Heroscape.
Yes.
Man, it's what's sad about Heroscape is that I have the group that I played it a ton with. I'm just not around anymore, so I'm hoping to find people that can play Heroscape with me again. For people who don't know what Heroscape is, it is a kind of a toy. It's a toy of you have terrain and you can custom build your own 3D map, which that is half the fun for me. Like, I get excited just for that part, especially if you have a lot of terrain. You can build really cool maps with bridges and castles, and I mean, that's
the
so
toy
much fun.
factor is off the chart. Like, when you make one of those big maps, it has better table presence than any
Oh my gosh.
game.
Yeah, and there was, I mean, we would back in the day, like, me and my buddy would spend, an hour before everyone would get here customizing the map. We'd put our sets together and build this awesome map, and everyone would get here and see what the battlefield is for the day. And it was so cool. But then the gameplay is simple but really fun, and it's you start off and you draft characters, and so there's tons of characters in the game and they all have a point value. And so typically we would play, let's say we're playing with 350 point armies. And so you can draft up to your point level. And so the draft is really fun because you're trying to find, okay, what characters have good synergy together and whatnot, what makes most balanced. We've done free for all. A lot of times we play team versus team, and that works really well. But then just, moving around the map, I mean, the whole terrain element is just creates a thing that no other board game delivers, of like, being high ground and the benefit that has, and you're going around and there's these glyphs that you're getting that give you special powers, and those glyphs control a lot of like where the fighting happens because they're really powerful if you're standing on them. And so when you're creating the map, can control a little bit where the central kind of fighting areas will be. Man, Heroscape, if you just want to like get around, draft characters, build an awesome map, and duke it out to the end, it's wonderful. It's not like complex. There's not a lot of rules. It's simple.
It's one of those games that it's like, why didn't we find this game when we were
oh my god
10 years old? It's just a dream for like, kid that, and I definitely could see, I'm sure you picture it as a game someday playing with kids.
Absolutely.
I don't have it because you have all of what we used to have. And you can't get it right now. It's not made anymore. Hasbro tried to kind of like kickstart it, failed. However, Heroscape has been picked up by, I think, Renegade Games. So supposedly it's coming back, which is a long time coming.
Gosh, it is such a good opera, man. Like, if they could just deliver,
it's like printing money. Like, it's a shock that it, and like you might look at the Hasbro's campaign and be like, well, but it didn't fund like if it was printing money. I think they made some pretty big mistakes with that campaign. Like the only buy-in level was like the big.
Yeah.
And so it's like you don't have like any smaller entry point.
A lower starting point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very intrigued to see. I think it's Renegade Games. See what they do with it, because it's a game that I would love to, as my kids get older, get back into and not,
I have so many amazing heroes, and the fact that I haven't played it in I don't know who knows how many years, but those memories still just carry on. So my number nine goes to Heroscape.
There you go. My number 9 is a game of conflict, but for only 2 players and much more tense historical conflict. This is Twilight Struggle, a staple of my top 10 for, if I'm looking at my sheet here, it's been number 4, 5, 8, 8, 8, 8, 7, 9.
Higher than Eldritch Horror. Wow,
it is. And again, it's probably the swinginess, a little bit of Eldritch experience.
Twilight Struggle does deliver.
Let's be honest, Twilight Struggle is always reliable. I mean, it is a beautiful game design. Another one we reviewed recently, one I haven't gotten to play super recently. It's not an easy one to get to the table, especially now that my main gaming partner for Twilight Struggle, Daniel, we don't live in the same area. So, but it just, man, it's such, for a 2-player game, if I'm going to play a 2-player game that's got like, very head to head as opposed to kind of working on our own things, and that is kind of the epic feel. I mean, it's going to be 1 of 2 games. There's a game I already talked about on my list, which is War of the Ring, which is the big epic Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But this is still my favorite. The mechanisms here and just the way they all interconnect and the way the map, it grows, what you have to be, keeping track of. It just starts with the Middle East and Europe and Asia, but then it's like the whole world in which scoring cards are coming out in the order. The card-driven system is just sublime, and I know it's not the only game that uses it. It makes me intrigued to try other GMT games that use this card-driven system. However, I play Twilight Struggle so infrequently that it's like, well, if I want to play that and I have the opportunity to play that, I'll probably play Twilight Struggle. But maybe someday I'll have the opportunity to do it more and might explore some others in kind of that series. But man, it's just, I mean, our review is like pretty glowing that we did for this game. It's been on Daniel's list already. Just a brilliant design. It used to be the number 1 game on Board Game Geek. I think it originally came out back in 2005 or something. Right. So it's held as a modern classic. And
we mentioned that this isn't our type of game. No. Like we wouldn't. It's not like we're the people that are going to buy a big head-to-head, war conflict. Like, we only got it because it was the number 1 game on Board Game Geek.
Like, I recommend this to people not based on like, do you like history? Do you like war games? It's like, do you want an epic, 3-hour head-to-head game that's super interesting with the strategy? If that's what you want, Twilight Struggle is an amazing choice, regardless of what you think of the theme. You don't have to care about the Cold War.
History was my worst subject.
You might learn something, but
seriously, everything I know about the Cold War is from Twilight Struggle.
Yes, so. Cuban Missile Crisis. All these events that, like, because we're us youngins, we weren't alive during the Cold War.
Yeah.
But learn about these events through the cards. One that it's one of those ones, like, there's other games on my list that's like, ooh, it'll be interesting to see how this moves. I mean, this has been rock solid within like a band of 4 ranks for like 9 years, which is pretty impressive.
It's so consistent. The only time it doesn't deliver is if you whoop me.
Which is still good fun.
That just delivers for you. That doesn't deliver for me. So,
it's been a while since we've had a really lopsided one, but
yeah, that's true. So
I always have to soften it, because if you lose badly in Twilight Struggle, it basically means the game ends way early because you don't make, because it's, you get all the way to 20. You miss like
the best part of the game.
And so I always have to say like, oh, well, look on the bright side, we get to play more games today than I thought we were going to.
Meanwhile, I'm like crying over there. Yeah. So nice. So that is your number 9. Okay. Number 8 for me goes to a game that has occupied, I think this is true, has occupied the number 1 spot for me in previous years the longest.
Interesting.
And that's going to go to Star Wars Imperial Assault.
Okay, I don't think I realized that was your number one.
It was my number
for a
one
stretch
for,
there when
for
you were playing
pretty
it a
much
lot.
all through kind of the high school into college years. Because and that's the hard thing about this game. I haven't played a campaign of it, and that's all I played. I don't play any of the skirmish stuff. I've
Yeah.
only done campaigns. I haven't played them in many years, and so it's like the game's probably just going to keep dropping, as long as you don't play it. But man, those memories of campaigns in this game are just so much fun. I have experience playing both as the rebel side, so the game is kind of, you can do it. A lot of times we'd play 4 people on the rebel side against 1 person playing as kind of the overlord, the imperial side. And what's fun is the person on the imperial side has the book. So you set up the mission and they know like the surprises that are going to come when you go through this door, or when they go here, and you interject and you read what thematically happens. And I mean, we went all into it. We had music playing, Star Wars music that correlated to what the event was and all this stuff. But man, what's so cool about this game is the campaign, because you start out with a character that they all feel so different. They're so unique. But as you go, the upgrading system is so cool, because as you're going each mission, you're getting these rewards where you're getting, and it's been a while, the terminology of it, but you get these like points or whatever that you can use to buy new like of your character's like special cards, and then you're also getting gold that you can buy for just random items and stuff. But you're constantly upgrading, getting better things, and you feel this. I'm just getting more and more powerful. But obviously, the Imperial side is getting upgrades as well, and it's this thing that. So you play all these missions on this branching campaign. So based off what happens in the mission, it branches one way or the other, and you keep going and going and going. Ultimately, whoever wins is that final battle. And obviously, the missions leading up, you're going to have a better chance of winning the final battle if you won more of them leading up, because that gave you better upgrades, better, things along the way to give you a better chance. But
yeah.
It is so exciting. The just actual tactical gameplay of it and I'm just thinking specifically from a like rebel side perspective, like, it isn't just a like, I'm just going to run out there and hack and slash. Like, you got to be really strategic about how you work together as a team. And man, I have so many great memories of Star Wars Imperial Assault. There's so much content. They've got long campaigns and short campaigns and all sorts of stuff. And they all kind of, as you get more content, it all builds upon, like, you can use any of the characters in any of the campaigns, and it all, they have kind of the main missions, which obviously are unique to each campaign, but then you have side missions as well, which can be from anything. So those all mix really cool. I know you're doing, a Lord of the Rings campaign right now, which I'd be curious, just like, how much different similarity there is.
I think they're pretty different. Like, Imperial Assault's definitely much more tactical combat. Whereas Lord of the Rings is a little bit more of this adventuring, it's a little bit less of the tactics on the map.
Yeah.
It's also not a one versus many. It's fully cooperative with the app.
Right, with the app. Yeah.
Assisting.
So, great memories with Star Wars Imperial Assault. I mean, the fact that it's still in my top 10, it's just I feel like all these games I'm announcing are games I just haven't, well, except for Nemesis, but haven't played in forever, but are just the memories.
It's partly the types of games that rise to the top for you. Don't tend to be the easiest ones to get to the table.
Right. It's the ones that deliver those just like experiences together. That's what I love. So
Imperial Assault, that might be one of your highest games that I have never played. And it's not one that I'm like likely to play. Because it's like you really want to do the campaign thing. I'm not going to be doing a campaign of it with you. I'm probably not going to be getting it myself. But I've played similar enough games that I can like, picture. We went back. We did Descent second edition. We did a campaign in. Yeah, that's more similar.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. My number 8 is my highest new game on my list. And it is a game that played with you first. You taught it to me, and then I stole it. This is Ark Nova.
Oh, wow. Number 8.
Number 8. Now, Ark Nova has been a huge hit in the board gaming world. I mean, it seems like every reviewer you see, it's like Ark Nova's shooting to the top of their list. It's not quite top for me, but when I looked into it for the first time, you know, if you talk about games that are like cater made to my tastes of what could be some of my favorite games, Ark Nova in a lot of ways is a greatest hits of things I enjoy in games. Building up your own thing, having a whole deck of cards with unique stuff that you get and have to figure out which cards to do, all driven by like a tight, interesting system. It all comes together really well. I've only played it a few times, so this is like a little bit of a preliminary spot on the list. Like, it'll be interesting to see as I play it more. But yeah, I mean, it just, the gears that are, you know, working together as you're thinking of what to do in Ark Nova just work for me. It's got the whole system with the cards that you want to do the more powerful ones to the right, and then they slide to the left and make the things you haven't done as recently more powerful. And so you're kind of, there's this sequencing of what do I need to do before something else to get it to upgrade. Like, I have a sponsor card that I need to get my sponsor card 2 over. And it's like, okay, well, so that means I need to do 2 things, you know, to the right of it first. Okay, I guess I could do this association task now, but that's not as good as if I mean, it's very interesting how that works. And then you have cards that's driving a lot of what you're wanting to try to do. And then it's definitely in that style of game where it's like, there's so many ways to get like a little bonus that does something, you know, can like enable you to chain something. Every time you play an enclosure or anything into your zoo, if you cover up a space that has a bonus, you just get the bonus. You have on the, it's got a very interesting thing with the score tracks. If you have the appeal of your zoo and then you have like your contributions to conservation projects, I forget what the actual track is called, but you basically, those are going in opposite directions and you need them to cross. And so you can lean more into one or the other, but eventually you want to get them to meet on the score track. But that conservation track has a bunch of really powerful bonuses early on it. So you're kind of thinking like, I don't want to put off, you know, supporting a conservation project or finding some way to get conservation points early because I want to get those key upgrades. You can upgrade your actual action cards so that you're getting better versions, which is a huge thing. You want to get more of those association workers because if you don't, you only have one to send over there, and then your association worker card or your card is just like dead for the rest of the round because you can't, you know, do anything else until the coffee break when it comes back. It's just it's a game I'm definitely wanting to play more. Like I said, I was going to be shocked if I didn't like it from what I looked into it. It's nice that it lived up to it for me. I'm excited about some of the expansion content that they've announced for it. So yeah, will be interesting to see, does it go up? Does it go down? Does it hold? But it's a game that if I looked at my whole wish list of games I was looking into, I would have pegged Ark Nova as like, that probably is the highest probability of jumping really high on my list. Just from how much, I mean, people are raving about it. I mean, Tom Valsky from the Dice Tower jumped to his #1 game of all time. It's like, okay, geez, it like must be good. And it is good. It is very good.
I feel like I never really got to talk or hear from you just how much you I could tell you liked it, but man,
when I've played it, my last few games have been since I got it from you. I've played it a few more times.
That's really awesome. Cool.
Cool. You know what time it is? You know what time it is, Daniel?
I think it's like 9:23.
Oh my gosh. Oh, yeah. We're in different time zones. I was like, holy cow, how long have we been filming, Daniel?
Ryan's like, it
is time to announce a winner to the giveaway. So let's jump over to the magic wheel of names. Alrighty, what we have here is a giant wheel of all of the entries to our contest. It is, it's very hard to read.
How many of those say Ryan on them? Jeez.
Yeah, we'll see. If you have multiple entries from the previous 4 videos, your name will be on this wheel multiple times. I don't think we explicitly said this, but we're drawing 3 winners. You can only win once. So once you win, we will be removed. Yeah, come on. What is this? So we are going to give this a spin, and that is going to be the first winner. Remember, you are going to be getting an email a few days after this video goes live.
Here we go.
With the details.
Man, what a cool looking wheel. Here we go.
I did verify that we have just first names and last initials on here, but I did verify that there's no duplicates. So if it matches your name and first initial, and you entered the contest. If you didn't enter the contest, it's not you. But
yeah.
Okay, here we go. Give it a spin.
Go, moment of truth.
Hype. Okay, it's very trippy. feel like I'm getting hypnotized. It is Maxime T.
Woo!
Oh man, this website is
Maxime.
hype. Yes.
Hype.
And remember, you are going to get to select any game from our top 50s that is readily available and within the $80 threshold we set. We will get in contact. We can work with you and help you decide on a good game to pick. But congratulations, and let's jump back to our lists. Daniel, hit us with your number 7.
My number 7 is a game that I have only played 2-player. Technically, I think it's 2 to 4, but man, it would be long if you play with more than 2. It's a game that you have technically not played, but you've played an older version of it.
I'm on to you, Daniel. I got it.
This goes to Through the Ages, a new story of civilization. This one has been able to get to the table a lot more because my wife loves this game, and that is
huge.
Great when it's a very long game and you're only going to mainly play it with 2 players. But this is just a fantastic, big, long game that just spans through history, right? The title, Through the Ages, and you feel this just amazing progression as the game goes on of at the beginning of the game. So the entire game, there's this row of cards that you're constantly using actions to take cards from and add to your civilization. And so what's so cool is at the start of the game, you're drafting leaders like Moses and all these super early on leaders, and the military is a military that fits that time period. It's super just like beginning stuff. But then as the ages move on, you're constantly upgrading and it's getting newer and newer. And then by the time the game is at the end, you've got restaurants and you've got jets and you've got all this sort of stuff. So just that progression is really cool. But the mechanics of the game are just so tight. I mean, you're as you're taking these cards, I mean, you've got kind of these limited actions. You've got kind of your normal white actions that you're taking, and you've got military actions as well. And so that's kind of controlling how much you're getting to do with taking cards, how much you're doing with upgrading the things that you have. You're constantly producing resources and food, but you have to be careful about all of that, because if you produce too many resources and you're not spending them, I don't know what the term is, but you
corruption,
lose
I think.
Corruption.
At least that wasn't my old edition.
Right. And I think there might be a similar thing with food as well, where so you're constantly having to just keep everything in check and tight together. You can completely change how many workers you have if you upgrade your government. I mean, that can completely change. Suddenly, instead of having 5 whites and 3 military, suddenly maybe I have 8 white and 1 military, because it's a very peaceful government or something like that. All that is just so much fun. And when I'm playing with my wife, I mean, it's this constant kind of looking at what the other person is doing, because military is a huge thing in this game. It's actually one of the biggest things I like about this edition compared to the one that we played, the first one, because in the first one, and maybe this was just because I was always on the wrong end of this, but if you got behind in military, it was brutal. I mean, you would just get slammed. That's still the case. If you don't keep up with military, you're going to get wrecked. But they've added a lot of ways to make it easier to catch up. I think one of the new things is now you can, when you're defending, you can spend cards as towards that defense or something like that, I want to say. They added some various tweaks that just helped it not be as, because a lot of times, if you get attacked and then it hurts you really bad, and then a lot of times in the old edition, you can just keep going after them, just hit them while they're down. But the just central mechanics of the getting the cards, managing resources, producing resources, and then the thing is, in this game, you never feel like you can do everything you want to do. In fact, I always feel like at the end of the game, it ends, and I'm like, I wanted I wasn't able to get it, because you can't get everything. And so you're making these tough decisions of, man, I really could use upgrading my resource production thing, but I need that leader, or you can't do everything. And so you're constantly putting these tough decisions throughout the game, the progression, all of it. It's one that I really hope someday you can try the new edition, because I think they added a lot of really great improvements to it.
Yeah, I really do need to. And I really enjoyed the previous edition. Honestly, like, it was just with such a hard game to get to the table, and some other games that were filling that it left my collection. But this is one that I've always considered, like, with the new edition, I could see myself getting. It's hard when where I'm at right now, I would have almost no opportunity ever to play
I am
it.
your prime long 2-player
candidate. The
candidate.
long 2-player niche is not one I often hit these days. But yeah, it's a game that if I did have it and had played it, it would probably rank fairly high for me as well. It's just such a good system, and the way the cards come out and everything. It's good stuff.
Yeah. It's not a system of like surplus. It's constant, just tight, tight, and managing everything, and I love that.
You gotta managing a lot. Like, there's just a lot to track in that game. I know there's a lot of people that just prefer playing it on the app just to simplify at least the upkeep of it. But man, I like sitting down and playing a long, tangible game around the table. Plus, does it still have the tiny little pieces? I remember the edition I had always had those tiny little yellow, and they're kind of small. Yeah,
fortunately, I have
not for babies.
I have a little overlay thing for the board, so that if you don't like bump the board, they don't slide around. So yeah, that's kind of nice. But
yeah,
there you go.
They were always like round, so if they tipped, they would just like roll off the table. By our pets,
Yes, they are not. This is not a baby-proof game. So
speaking of games with tons of pieces, I do wonder if this is the game in my collection that has the most pieces. Like, if you just
that's a really interesting clue.
Pieces.
That's a really interesting clue.
This is A Feast for Odin, which is a big box Uwe Rosenberg game that combines big worker placement and kind of strategy with cards with this polyomino puzzling on your board. And it's part of the reason it's got so many freaking pieces is like there's all these tiny little puzzle-y pieces that you're going to be using. And it's so interesting how the core system in this works of like, those pieces are essentially resources that you're ultimately wanting to then convert into like this spatial puzzle. But there's the hierarchy of like orange upgrades to red to green to blue. And the higher colors are much better because you can use them on, certain boards and with fewer restrictions. And so it's this interesting thing of acquiring these, managing the resources, managing, upgrading them, but everything feeds then into this spatial puzzle. And then it's got the engine building of you're trying to increase your income. And we've talked about how it is pretty sandboxy. Like it is 70 worker placement spots. There's not like a lot of really strong direction given by the cards. It's like little nudges here and there. And that usually is not my preference. In fact, it isn't my preference in these types of games. I like a little bit more tighter, give me some tough variables and figure out how to work with it. But the reality is, every time I play for Feast for Odin, it's just so dang fun doing the things that it overcomes what's really my personal preference in that area. And so the Norwegians expansion is really nice for kind of improving the board layout and a bunch of other options. But yeah, big resource management, puzzly, a little bit more forgiving than some of his other games. Like, it kind of gives you a lot of your food necessity. That said, you end up making it hard on yourself because you're like, oh, I could take another island or so, you can definitely push it to where it does feel tight again because you've chosen to go after more, which is kind of nice. But yeah, it's I think it's how
that is. Yeah, did that move up for
it
you?
Actually moved down a little bit. It's been as high as my 3, but right around this spot.
I just forgot that how much you loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I really
said,
like it, but
it's one of those ones where I know I like a lot of things about it, but then I also know the things I don't like about it. And we've talked about some of the things I don't like about it. And so then when I don't play it, I think in my mind I remember the things I don't like a little bit and it goes down. Yeah. And then I play it and I'm like, man, those things I don't like end up being kind of a drop in the bucket in the experience.
Yeah.
So one I really, really enjoy makes it in at my number 7.
Wow. Yeah, I just man,
Yeah.
this is
We're learning so much about each other, Daniel.
We are. This is good. This is good. My number 6 is a game that you got rid of.
Yeah,
it was my number 1 previously. And this is going to go to
I wondered where this is going to land.
Gloomhaven. Still obviously in the top 10. Again, the drop has a little bit to do with I finished it. I'm not with the group that I played with it anymore. Gloomhaven obviously was the number 1 game on Board Game Geek. It's a massive game. I don't know if you can see it back there. I think it's up. I think it's actually right there. But just a mass. I mean, this Gloomhaven brings you into this massive world, a cooperative campaign where you're not just one character, but you're like living in this world of Gloomhaven, traveling around a map, doing missions and all this sort of stuff. And your characters actually, what's really interesting is you aren't just like one character the entire time. You play a character, but then eventually your character achieves its personal objective, and then it retires and it goes off. The character goes off into the city. You can even encounter it again. Yeah. You can meet him again, but then you unlock a new character. You choose a new character, and the characters are wildly different how they play. Very, very unique and different, which is so much fun. But Gloomhaven's so big. There's so much awesome stuff, upgrading, all events, all that cool stuff. At the core, the card play, I just really love. The whole, you have all your cards, and every turn you pick 2 cards and you do the top half and the bottom half. And then and then you choose the initiative of, is it
one of those?
One of the cards, right?
Yeah, I don't think you don't have to like choose which is going to be the top or bottom yet.
Right. And so you kind of, your teammates, you kind of know, like, okay, I'm going faster or not, but the whole initiative, like, that can really influence, whether your character is a really fast character or whether you're really slow, all your cards are really slow. That changes a lot. But the whole playing two cards, you want to be as efficient as possible, because every time you have to take your discard pile back in your hand, you have to lose one of your cards permanently. And so as the mission's going on, your hand is slowly dwindling down smaller and smaller, and that's ultimately your life. If you run out of cards, you're out of the mission. And so that just whole hand management system is really fun. It's I just had so much fun with the 2 guys I'm playing with, and we're like, okay, so you're gonna do this and you do this, and okay, I'm gonna go fast here and whatnot, and we all coordinate together, and the synergy of the characters, you kind of find your role, and the characters get really powerful. I mean, as you upgrade them more and more, on each upgrade you get to choose, I think, between 2 cards of the next level that you upgrade to, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is so. I mean, you get to some of those last cards, and you're just seeing like the full power of the character that you have here. It's just, I love it. This is the sad part of campaign games, you finish it, and although it delivered everything I could have wanted, and so there's almost an element of, what more could I ask for? But we'll see. I mean, I would absolutely, in a heartbeat, if I had a group that was like, let's go play Frosthaven, I would get it and do it, because I love it. Sounds like they added some good improvements there. But yeah, if you like the campaign, living in a world, but doing all that all around a really nice card. It's not just chucking dice. Which is
ultimately what's going to be the make or break. You have to love the card-driven tactical combat. And it's a really solid system.
It's really solid. That. Yeah. It's not just, in these type of games, it's very normal to just see you just roll a bunch of dice. You just roll a bunch. We've seen that. This is such a tight, good system wrapped around an incredible thematic experience. So my number 6 dropped from a number 1, Gloomhaven. Yeah.
I also played an almost complete Gloomhaven campaign. At the beginning of it, this jumped into my top 10 games. Over time, dropped a little bit. And I'm done with Gloomhaven. That's where we're maybe a little different
Wow,
after done
hot
this.
take.
I feel like I got everything I wanted, but I don't really feel like coming back to it. But it is a really solid game. I have good memories playing it.
Nice.
My number 6 is a game you've not played very much. And it's been it's not new to my list, but it's relatively newer and been one of the hottest games that I've acquired in the last few years with my group and with me personally. And this is high. Number 6. This is Dune Imperium.
Oh, wow.
And this one I know is very popular. It was my 13 last year, so it is ascended into the top 10. Probably supported by me acquiring the Rise of Ix expansion, which is a very, very amazing expansion. This game, I just love. It's one of my favorite games in the category that's like below kind of a lot of my favorite strategy games because it's not quite as long. Like this is a little bit closer to the 90 minutes.
Was it an hour and a half?
To 2 hours, yeah. And it's got such solid but simple mechanisms. It's got this, you're building your deck, and your cards are how you're going to go then take actions on the worker placement spots, but whatever card you play tells you which areas on the board you can go to. So it's just so many interesting decisions that stem out of, which card do I want the effect of, but which spots does it let me go to? I guess it's a little bit similar to Underwater Cities in that regard, which is, again, it's popped up on both Far West, where the cards are kind of informing the worker placement. That's very interesting. But then it's deck building, where the cards you have left over in your hand are going to be able to give you influence to be able to buy new cards or give you other bonuses. And so I love deck building and like that feeling of getting unique cards and finding ones that work well together and how that makes your deck better as the game goes on. But then it's a very highly interactive game. It's not just working on your own thing. I mean, if you know anything about the Dune universe and theme, it makes sense that
Which
this would
I don't.
Yeah. Daniel, I don't think has seen the movie, read the book. He doesn't even know how to spell Dune.
I don't.
Just every round revolves around this conflict of, whoever is first in the conflict is going to get this, second's going to get this. And so that informs the worker placement, because I can only be part of the conflict if I take certain spots that are going to let me contribute to the conflict. Is this one I want to go after, or do I not? Or, man, other people aren't really going after it. Maybe I could sneak in and like get one of these rewards without a lot of investment. And ultimately it's a race to the 10 points. And, I've played it quite a bit in the last, let's see, do I have the actual number here? 6 times in the last year, which for a bigger game like this is quite a bit when it's competing with a lot of other games in my collection to get to the table. Has gone over really well every time. I have the Immortality expansion, but have not played it. But I'm excited to try that because I've heard very good things about it.
Yeah.
And I just see this being a staple in my collection for a long time. It kind of has fallen into a spot that like it doesn't really directly compete with a lot of games for me. Like I don't have a lot that are kind of in that time, but that level of strategy and interaction. So yeah, big fan of Dune Imperium.
I'm happy our viewers got to hear you talk about it, because I'd only played it a few times and I knew I liked it, but man, I could not remember for the life of me like how that game played. And so thank you, Ryan.
I like to let Daniel
bolstering the content of our
flounder a little bit, trying to remember some game he hasn't played
then he throws
years.
the throws the life jacket at him and reminds me how games actually played.
Perfect.
Thank you, Ryan. Good stuff. Okay, so we're going to our number
top 5.
We're to the top 5. Oh my gosh. Okay, my number 5 is a game that basically every game that you've announced, almost every game you've announced, I've been shocked that they're higher than this game for you. But this is a game you've also announced today. And this goes to Elder Chore.
I see, yes.
Elder Chore delivers probably the highest cooperative moments of my life. Like when I think seriously, like if I think of like probably. If I had to like rank top gaming memories, it's probably so many are in Elder Chore when all hope was lost, and the most miraculous, we just but wait, if you go over here and we do this and we get these 3 die rolls in a row, we might have a chance, and it all happens, and it's just the most unbelievable experience I mean, the game is just right up our alley, like you were saying earlier. I mean, if you get the expansions, I mean, they're our favorite type of expansions because they just take the variability for every game and just multiply it. And so we have so much content for it, which makes every game so unique. I mean, all the characters, all the items, all the ancient one, all the events. I mean, it's a variability, just jambalaya. I think I must say.
That's what they say.
Variability jambalaya. And that's just, it's like, that's what I love. I love when every game I go into, it's like you're opening up this, you're uncovering what randomized experience am I going to have this time. And while there is so much luck in the game, because ultimately, right, there's a lot of die rolling, we love that kind of calculating the odds and putting ourselves in the best position. And the game, because it ultimately comes down to die rolling, sometimes you have a horrific game of it, and those are awful. And this game, if it didn't have those, could be my number one game. I mean, legitimately. Like, if you knew that you were never going to have those duds, it might be that. But I have to account for that, because I know in the last year I've had a game where, you set aside, I mean, you guys said this is the game for the night. This is this is it. And then when you have those and you walk away and you're like, but then it just makes you want to play it again sometime, because you're like, okay, we can have it. But when it delivers,
the worst ones are where it, goes poorly, but it still drags out.
Oh,
and so it still took 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah, we had one of those. We knew we lost like super early.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, do we even keep
that said,
doing this?
We have had, concrete examples of times that we thought we lost early and, stuff happened. So,
yeah. So it's right up our alley. Actually dropped 2 spots for me, but still in my top 5. A wonderful game, Eldritch Horror.
Very nice. I think we definitely endorse that more strongly than I think most. I don't see it on a lot of like reviewers' top lists these days. It's not, it's 10 years old at this point. But yeah, man, we cannot discount the experiences that game has provided us.
Yeah.
Number 5. Woo! This game Daniel does not have, but I know you like it a lot. You just probably wouldn't have the opportunity to play it a lot if you owned it.
Okay.
This is a game, I feel like I always give the same clue for it, which is that this is the game that we originally played competitively, and then we tried the cooperative scenario, and we're like, we're never playing it competitively again. This is way better as a cooperative game. This is Mage Knight, and specifically, I have the Ultimate Edition that has all the expansion content. This is a beast of a game that's hard to recommend. Like, if I know I'm recommending it to somebody that's gonna have to learn from the rule book, it's one of the more intimidating rule books. You open the thing and it's like 4 columns of like 0.8 font on every page, and like it's a brutal one to learn, like not from somebody, but just an epic game of you're these Mage Knight characters going out on the map and going around. It's driven by your deck that you're going to be deck building throughout the game and getting new cards. It probably more than any other game I have gives that feeling that you might get in like video games of like leveling up your character.
Yes.
And like you get to do it all over one session. Like something like Gloomhaven gives you that feeling, but you're doing it over many sessions of a campaign. Yeah. Mage Knight lets you do that entire arc in one game. It's a 4-hour game, but you get to do it in
it's
the
like
one
4
game.
Gloomhaven games, but no, just kidding.
No, but and it's so fun to go from, it's fun even at the beginning when you're not super strong. Just the mechanisms of using the cards and how do you use them to move and attack, and like you always want to go and like fight something that's going to be hard, because getting that experience like to level up is so huge. So you're like willing to like, okay, I'm probably going to get hurt here, or like the odds aren't good, but even if I get hurt, if I can just kill this thing, like that could jumpstart my whole game as far as, and then you end up with all these wounds in your deck that are clogging up your deck. But yeah, it's really for me turned into like kind of a 2-player cooperative game is like, that's the most likely way I'm going to get it to the table. I'll like maybe do 3-player cooperative if everybody really knows the game and we're willing to put 5 hours in. And we even play on the blitz mode, which is like the accelerated. Maybe we're just slow compared to some people that play this game.
Maybe.
Or just slow generally. But it's so fun. I have no idea how such a long game with so many variables seems to so consistently come down to the final castle assault or the final attack on the Valkyr scenario being so close. Like, it feels like there should be more times that, like, we don't even get there and, like, you know, die or, like, we win more easily. But, man, does it feel like it just dials in and it's so satisfying. You know, there's a lot of variables that feed into the puzzle of these combats, of the effects of the characters and if you're fighting multiple enemies and the cards that you have. But yeah, it is just an amazing epic experience. You get that deck building, leveling up. I won't ever play it competitively again. One of the problems playing it competitively is when your opponent's over there trying to puzzle something out, you're incentivized to not help them at all. It's like, okay, wait until they're done. Whereas cooperative, when we end up in those complex situations, we can kind of like collaborate a little bit. And so that's nice. And you're a little more invested in what everybody's doing. So Mage Knight, it's been high for me. This is another consistent. It came in at my number 10 before we had played it. How much did it jump? Which is just a testament to how solid the mechanisms were, even when it wasn't you know, in its ideal form. But then it's been at 3 to 5 ever since.
Wow.
So yep, good stuff.
Yeah,
love it. I've nothing more to say. That's it.
I have nothing more to say either.
Except that we have to announce another contest entry. I was like, what are the odds we're going to forget this? Let's jump over to the Wheel of Wonders.
The Wheel of Wonders, as they all call it.
Here we go. Alrighty, this is going to be the second of 3 winners. Again, you're going to get to pick any game off of our... You could pick one of these games we talked about. Mage Knight might actually be past the threshold. Sorry if that one sounded
giving them
cool.
false hope.
Yeah, dang it. I shouldn't.
Why are we doing this right after Mage Knight?
Yeah. Oh, well. There's plenty of good options here. Let's give this wheel a spin.
Here we go.
Almighty wheel, tell us. James R. If your name is James, something that starts with R, you know, probably
congratulations,
running
James.
Around the room because you.
I hope, James, you are going ballistic right now.
Ballistic.
Ballistic.
Speaking of ballistic, let's jump back into our numbers 4 through 1. So, Daniel, we now get to hear all the games that you think are better than Elder Tor. As you've been finding out for me on this list.
You can protest them. I don't think you'll be surprised by this one. My number 4 goes to a game that I know we both love a lot, and that is going to be Terraforming Mars. I love Terraforming Mars. It is...
End of story. There you go.
End of story. Let's just stop it there. You know, this is obviously a really popular game, and I just think... it brings in so many things that I like. I love just all the cards that you're getting throughout the game. You know, I was actually thinking it a little bit, and maybe you agree with this, gives me a Race for the Galaxy feel of like kind of you're getting these cards and, okay, which ones am I going with? Which ones am I not? Kind of has that, and the cards are really impactful, and that's huge. Like, you mean, they're the things that are driving, you know, your strategy and whatnot. So the whole card play is fun, but then you've got the whole shared board element, and so interesting how, you know, everyone's contributing to advancing these things on Mars, but you're just having to kind of, you know, pay attention to a lot of things. You know, early in the game, you have the goals, is that what they're called? The things that you go, you know, early on,
milestones, and then
milestones.
Awards,
awards. Yeah, there you go. So milestones early, but then the awards later and all that. So much fun, but you know, at the core, just like playing cards that upgrade your little systems down here, and you're kind of building, this engine of upgrading things, playing more cards. I think the Prelude expansion boosted this game for me, because now instead of just starting at 0, everyone gets this like super power start where you get to keep 2 out of 4. You get dealt 4 Prelude cards, and you can keep 2, and you get them when you're choosing your corporation and all your cards. So it's just more things that you can kind of start with this strategy right off the bat, and I love that. I love having this like direction I'm going right away. And so it's a combination of you're doing your own thing and you're building this engine and all that, but you're also paying attention to, you have to pay attention to what the other players are doing, specifically around those milestones, those awards, where sometimes there's an opportunistic spot on the map. Someone's built some greeneries, you can drop a city right in there, and all that sort of stuff. So you're constantly in this like tension of doing your own thing, but you also really have to pay attention to what's going on out there on the map, and yet you don't necessarily have to. Sometimes a winner has a ton of points out on the map, and sometimes it's all down in your cards.
It's a game that's very hard to tell who's gonna win as you're nearing the end. Because you have times where, people just rocket back because they have so many points in cards. It's kind of like hidden, throughout the game. Or like just have a ton of points on the board on Mars. Yeah, and so if you like, the core of the game is card drafting, right? Well, and that's how that's not card drafting for everyone. It's card drafting how we play. We play the version where you actually draft the research phase.
You actually draft the
Even if
cards.
You're not doing that, it still feels a little bit like card drafting because you're getting some options that you have to buy.
Choosing what you want to keep. And that's the core tension of the game is you want to buy more cards. There's so many cards you want to buy, but it costs 3 money to buy, to just keep a card, but it also costs money to play cards. And so if you're just buying tons of cards, you're not going to have money to do everything else you want to do. And so it's that, how much should I buy this? Because maybe I don't need this card now, but man, that card would be so useful in the future. But that's money I don't have right now. You're constantly in a tension of figuring out how to balance kind of the resources that you have. Man, Terraforming Mars probably has one of the highest like floors of a game. It just delivers I feel like
it doesn't really fall flat.
It doesn't fall flat.
Anyway.
Like you can maybe have a little bit of an off game, but it just delivers every single time. It's so unique every time between your corporation, prelude cards, all the cards you're getting dealt. We have a few of the different maps, and so the milestones and awards are different. The map's different. It's just, you can see a trend. We like variability.
We do like variability. The other thing I'm realizing, because Terraforming Mars is a big engine building game. So much of what you're playing is increasing your productions, and that's letting you do more and more. I'm looking at my list here and realizing, like, my top 8 games all have an element of engine building. Yeah. So I think there is just a lot of truth to that feeling of progression. Of you're getting more and more powerful, and because I'm more powerful, I can do more things. Yeah, and a game that lets you feel that power, where it's like, oh my gosh, look where because sometimes Terraforming Mars, you're just like, look at what I've built, and I think I don't have the colonies expansion, but honestly, I've really loved that every time we've played with it, and so that's one I'm gonna have to check out. But just a great. Just if you're looking at what's a game that I want to take to just taste into like a heavier board, what are some of these heavier strategic games? Terraforming Mars is I think a pretty decent first one to look at. I think so, and it strikes that balance between
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I was waiting for just an absolutely not.
Yeah, viewers, do not listen to what he just said. It strikes a nice balance of being like still interactive, but not too mean. There's a few mean moments. I could do without the "I'm gonna come and bomb your 8 plants."
That's probably the thing I like the least about it.
There's a lot of the heavier strategy games, at least that like we enjoy and own, are more kind of multiplayer solitaire where you're really working on your own thing.
Yeah.
Where I know, like, if I'm introducing to somebody new, there's a lot of people that want it to be more interactive. And so Terraforming Mars is maybe a nice balance of like, you can kind of appeal to both sides of that.
Yeah.
But yes.
That's awesome.
Very nice.
Yep.
What was that, your number 4?
That's my number 4, Ryan. Here we go.
I think actually, I think my 4 and 3 are going to surprise you.
Oh boy.
How high they are.
I will give my authentic reaction to this.
My number 4 is one that you talked about a while back, so I clearly am much higher on it than you are. Daniel's bracing himself. This is a game that from the first time I played it, I was just like, man, this feels so fresh in a sea of lots of kind of bigger strategy games. Just the way it was working, I was like, man, this is just really, really fun. And every subsequent time I played it, I was like, I think this is a game that I'm going to end up owning, because at the time I did not own it. I was playing your copy. This is Great Western Trail.
Wow.
Number 4.
Number 4.
Now, I would say that's shocking, except last year it was number 4. The year before, it was number 4.
I don't pay attention
So
to your list, Ryan,
since I've owned it, since I decided to get it, which I already knew at that point I loved it because I probably played it 5 or 6 times. Actually bought Maracaibo first. Determined I did not like Maracaibo as much as Great Western Trail.
Just had to make sure you wanted Great Western Trail.
Yep. Yeah, I just love Great Western Trail. In my options of strategy games, I love just how different it is. It's got this key thing of you're going through this long path to Kansas City, and by the end you want to have a really good set of cattle in your hand. So it's got this deck building thing of and manipulating your hand to have as many different cattle as possible, because that'll determine where you can ship to, and also determine how much money you get. But then you go back to the beginning of the trail and you get to do it again. And every turn you can go up to 3 spaces, or eventually if you increase your max movement. And so we talked about, like, it's so interesting, the pacing in this game, because ultimately what's going to end the game is the number of total trips people have made to Kansas City, because that's what really like bumps that little marker down. And so you're like, okay, I want to probably be as many of those as possible of like trips that were made, because that's where you're scoring a lot of big points and stuff. That said, like, you need your time to manipulate your hand to be good enough. You want to be doing other things. Like a lot of these actions
you got to be upgrading your deck.
Are really powerful. You want to be buying things, upgrading people. And so I just love that. And I love how in such a big strategy game, it boils down to, okay, there's all this I want to do. And like, I know by the end of the time I get to this trail, like there's a lot I need to think about of where I'm going to deliver. But right now, my options are the next 3 spots.
Yes.
And like, I know I bet if I'm going to go one spot, I better love that action, because I know I'm sacrificing speed. So it never feels overwhelming. Like, I feel like it does a good job of avoiding, some of the analysis paralysis you might get in other games, just because at any given time it kind of simplifies it. But yeah, really love what it's doing. I love the Rails to the North expansion, which kind of opens up that delivery phase to kind of have this network of, you can get these little branchlets, and there's kind of different strategies you can do. Honestly, it's a little surprising because in some ways it lacks what tends to be kind of some of my favorite things in games, which is that extreme variability through either faction abilities or you're getting cards. That is
interesting.
And it doesn't have it, right? Like there's not a lot that's going to make that feel so different from game to game, which I think that just speaks to how solid the core mechanisms are in Great Western Trail. I just have such a good time playing it, and it just engages in such a different way than some of my other favorite games. And I think that's what's held it here.
I'm curious, how many times do you have in front of you how many times you've played it?
1 in the last year, but a total of 9.
Okay.
So it's a pretty good sample
I was just wondering,
size.
Because I agree, it doesn't have a lot of, it's got almost no variable.
You do randomize the buildings. as far as which buildings you have available.
Right.
But it doesn't feel as crazy as variability in some other games. Maybe it's probably because we haven't often gone although the last time I played, I actually did go a little heavier on the buildings. But
I just wondered if you played, like, let's say you played like 6 games of Great Western Trail in a year or something, if you would start to see a little bit of that.
Yeah,
okay, that was a little similar. I don't know, but I agree. Great Western Trail, it's such a fresh take on kind of those heavier Euro games and delivers a really unique experience. I just can't think of another game that gives me that.
And it's got a lot of systems feeding into it with like the deck building and like, but nothing in the game do I feel like it's like, oh, this kind of got tacked on for complexity's sake. It just all fits together so well.
Really well.
Yeah. It's
wow.
I mean, it's my number 4.
Man.
That's
pretty... Well, I guess I just didn't read your list last year. I guess that's just the moral of all this. I shouldn't be surprised by any of this.
It's exactly what it was last year.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay, let's hit the top 3 here. I haven't like thought that much about which games I haven't heard from you.
Okay.
I don't know that I'm gonna get some huge
my number
surprises
3
here.
goes to a game that has been talked about in this video already. A game game I do not own, and I think I want to own it because I love it. If it's
your number 3, man,
I know. I feel like you have to own it if it's your 3. I just have to make sure I have the right person to play it. And this goes to Mage Knight. So Ryan already did some good waxing on Mage Knight, but I'll add to that as well. On top of kind of what everything we were saying about the progression, the epic arc. The thing I love about Mage Knight is, like, especially cooperative. I would never play competitive anymore. That sounds horrible. Cooperative is at the start of the game. It's this open map, and it's like we each run off in our own directions. And I'm kind of over here by myself, and I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? And I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna fight this thing so I can upgrade this. And we're kind of all running our own directions, upgrading and doing all of our own things. And the way that kind of spreads out and then comes all back together. And it's almost like we get to the finish and it's like, what is the fruit of what you've done this whole game? And I do agree. It's unbelievable how much the game always comes down to like that just final. It's so close every time. And so that's another reason it's so high is I can always count that Mage Knight's going to deliver. Can always count on that. It's gonna. We're not gonna have some just we got really unlucky and it just flopped early and I don't know if that's just the systems are just so I don't know like why that is.
That Vlada Shivado, the man's genius. I don't know.
I guess, but it always just gets to the final moment, and that moment is so epic because it's so hard. Like the final boss is just like, how are we gonna do this? But man, some of the cards you get along the way, I forget what some of those cards are called. I mean, there's like you
get the advanced actions that are kind of like better just cards. You can get units, like, you can get spells and artifacts.
Spells, units. I mean, they're powerful. Like, really, some of them are like unbelievably powerful. And so, but then, the whole just hand management and figuring out the best way to play your hand and whatnot. Wow. Mage Knight, it delivers the greatest, I would say, arc of just you start off and you get the full progression, upgrading, and by the end of the game you just feel like the most just powerful, and you're just going into this final battle together, throwing down your best hits, and it's this close finish. Man, what a wonderful game. I want to own it.
And we haven't played it. I don't think we played it together in a while.
It's been a while because it's long and whatnot, but Oh,
And it's one of those games that in any given session, it's almost guaranteed you probably messed up some rules along the way. I forgot. I
That's
swear
the other reason I don't want to
that-
get at that rule book, man.
Yeah, I won't be there to help you remember the
Oh,
rules.
I need Ryan with me because.
But like the
I'd be
one that always
lost.
gets me is like those castles at the end. Like each color castle has like a special, like every thing you fight in here
Yeah.
gets this extra condition. And so we always end up
We
like
forget that every
puzzling
time.
out the whole thing and we're like, we win. And then I look over and I'm like, oh no, because that changes everything about that
Yeah.
puzzle. You have to like restart.
If only we knew all the rules we break in board games,
Yeah, it's probably ignorance is bliss, baby. Just keep. I mean, it is something funny about the modern board gaming world is like games are probably misplayed more often than they're played completely correctly.
Oh,
Just
absolutely.
across. But it's
Yeah.
like as long as everybody's having a good time and like you're
We're good.
not,
We're good.
hopefully you're breaking rules that are like even for everybody. Instead of
Yeah,
just
as
hurting
long as
one
everyone's
player.
breaking the rules,
Yeah.
then no one's breaking.
Yeah, you heard it here first. As long as everybody's doing it, break the rules.
That's right. Okay, Ryan.
When I looked at my number 3 on my list, it shocked me that it was my number 3, and it's going to shock Daniel that it's my number 3.
I have a guess.
But it's a snapshot
We'll see
in
if it shocks.
time, and the fact of the matter is, right now, this game has rocketed up my rankings higher than I ever thought it would go. You talked about how it rocketed up your rankings higher than you thought.
I think I know what
Here
this
we
is.
go. This is Lorenzo Il Magnifico.
Yep.
And man, I had to do like a double take on this list of like, is this really my number 3? Is this really beat some of these games I've talked about? But man, talk about a game that's engine building to the extreme for one.
Yeah.
Like that, it so has that. With super tight worker placement, which is another one of my favorite things. Yes, it's covered by like about the driest theme imaginable with this Renaissance. But holy cow, especially with the expansion content where you're getting a super powerful house and then you get the leaders that you draft that are super powerful abilities that you can work towards getting those out. And then the entire game is drafting, worker placement to get these cards to build up engines and get the blue cards that give you special abilities. And it's so much of it happening. It's like almost over the top, the amount of ability and kind of engine building. And it's just, I have such a fun time engaging with those systems. If I have one complaint with the game, it's that the engine building stuff is so kind of over the top that in any given session, there's a good chance there's one player that just like kind of breaks it open. And so a lot of times the games aren't close. Like, somebody wins by 40 points because it's like, engine building has that snowball effect that if somebody gets it going, like they're probably only going to get further ahead.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I have so much fun playing it that whether I'm that person or I'm not, I just have such a good time with it. Getting the new edition, the big box, it's in the same size box, but it comes with the expansion stuff in it, including that mini expansion that now the normal decks for each tower have more cards. So it used to be that like those towers always were the same cards. Like in Age 1, you're always going to see the same 8 cards. It's just what order. Well, now that's not true. There's actually some variability in which ones are even in the game, which if you've learned anything from watching our channel, we love that variability of things that could come up.
Yeah.
I don't know if this will hold this high. It has the advantage of not, again, being quite as long as some of these games, though with all the expansion stuff, it does push a little closer to 2 or 2.5 hours. But I can't deny that in my 3 plays in the last year, I've played it 9 times total, it has just ascended the list.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those that I went into and was like, I looked at it and was like, yeah, this looks fine. Came out, oh my goodness, this is unbelievable.
That's another reason I feel like good endorsing it is because we probably have people watching that have slept on Lorenzo because they, saw the cover.
Great game.
Or like, there's so many games that come out in that category of these dry Euros. Lorenzo, in our opinion, is one that you definitely should check out if you like these styles of games.
I wasn't completely shocked, only because in the top expansions video, you had that as your number 1 expansion.
It was.
So, spoiler.
It did wonders for...
But
moving
So
this up the
I
list.
actually was thinking
But
this
three,
one could be
I mean,
really,
three.
but 3, yeah,
There's only 2 games higher.
That's egregious.
I don't know if
still.
you did that math, but there are only 2 games that are better than, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know one. I don't know the other. We'll see. Actually, I think I know both. We'll see.
I think I know both.
Okay. So we are
Number
to
2.
my number 2. Be interesting if you know both. My number 2.
So I'm very intrigued to hear what 2 is.
My number 2. I actually got to play again recently, and is probably, I mean, it's my by far my favorite Euro game. The mechanics are just unbelievable. The cards are powerful, and it delivers a lot of stress, but so much fun. And this goes to Agricola. I actually got to play this again very recently.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, even since we played it, which I've mentioned earlier that we've recently both gotten the new revised edition with all of the
expansions.
Cards, and those cards are unbelievable, man. Like
they're just again, more interesting, and it really amps it up.
So that builds upon a game that is borderline flawless in like what we want. I mean, super tight worker placement. So you're in, and the really interesting thing about the game is that a lot of games let you kind of run off, well, what direction you want to go, run off, specialize. This game does the opposite. It says you get a negative for anything you don't have of all these different areas. And you're capped on the max amount of points, except horses, that you can get in an area. So yeah, sometimes you see some crazy horse strategies.
Yeah,
but
I got 13 horses.
But so everyone knows everyone's trying to get to the same goal, kind of, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but how you get there is so tough because the worker placement's so tight. And so every decision, you can't waste a worker. Every worker's critical. But then, so you have a clear strategy, but then the resources compile. If someone doesn't take an action where there's, 3 wood accumulates there every round, 3 more wood gets out there. And so the resources accumulate. And now suddenly you had a strategy, but wow, there's 4 reed there. Yeah. Well, I didn't need the reed right now, but I will probably. I need to, and so you're constantly like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? The cards that you're dealt at the start of the game, you get 7 occupations, 7 minor improvements. They form your unique strat. I mean, you build your strategy around them. I mean, they're so powerful, especially these new ones. Every single one, it's like, oh my gosh, that's so either just unique or powerful, or okay, I can do this, because you got to be feeding your family. I mean, if you fall behind in the food, you're just going to be wrecked. And so you got to figure out a food strategy, and you like I said, where you're trying to get to. But it's how can I best use these resources I'm given and the tough worker placement to make that happen. I think it has a actually really satisfying arc to it, in that by the end of the game, you get to kind of look at what I've done, and sometimes that's not a very satisfying moment, as you're like, look at what I've done. But man, it is, I again, don't want to call a board game perfect, but in terms of delivering like worker placement, exciting, meaningful cards, tough decisions, variability, it just all comes together so well. So my number 2, Agricola. Very nice. Ryan, you should try that game sometime, Ryan.
I'm thinking about it. It looks like it might be good. And Agricola, there's games on this list that we talk about, like, we've played it a few times, upwards of 10 times. We're not sure how it's going to move around. Agricola is one.
Yeah, how many times have we
we're probably on screen right now, but I think I'm around 80 or something.
It was my number 2 last year.
And I mean, talk about a game that rewards that long
repeated play.
Because you get to the point you talk about, like, we're all trying to get to that same farm, but as you get more experienced, you know what you need to get as the bare minimum, but then you're thinking, where are my opportunities this game to go beyond that, to still get that, but go beyond that in different ways.
And the farmers, the more expansion is just, I mean, we would consider it essential. I can't even imagine playing without it at this point.
It is our favorite way to play. It definitely elevates the whole experience.
Yeah, so maybe if Ryan tries it someday, we can hear him talk about it. So there we go.
If you needed any more evidence that, like, I mean, you look at the other games that made Daniel's top 10.
Right.
The fact that a 17th century farming game is ahead of what clearly is like a strong tendency towards thematic
I have a
big
bias
experience.
Thematic experiences. But holy cow, this game, it's incredible. Incredible. Okay, Ryan. I'm very
My
curious.
number 2 is probably, I imagine it's not going to come as a shock to you.
I don't think so. I think I know it.
Daniel has talked about it. We've had I don't know if we didn't mention it, but like, we're going to have a lot of overlap in our tastes just because of how we've gamed together over the years. And we honestly have pretty similar gaming tastes. Like, you see some of the differences in these lists, but there is definitely a lot of overlap in some of our favorite games. My number 2 is Terraforming Mars. Terraforming Mars, who has held on to the number 2 spot for several years now, unchanged.
Held
on. And I agree with everything Daniel said. Love the engine building, and just the feeling. I love the dynamic of the shared map, the shared milestones, the awards, these interaction points that are really meaningful of how you're kind of competing with other players, but without feeling too mean most of the time. Even when you have to come in and bomb a bunch of plants, usually everybody knows you're going to pick the person that has the most plants, or occasionally you'll get the weird spots where it's like, you basically have to think, who do I think is winning? And both of them are like trying to convince you that they're not winning. And it's, just kind of an unfortunate thing. Or honestly, the saddest is when you have to bomb plants and the only person with plants is the person is like struggling. And you're like, I'm so sorry, I have to kill somebody's plants. But yes, Ryan, that aside, you add in, our favorite way to play is drafting the research phase, playing with Prelude, and playing with colonies. If I'm playing with a group that knows Terraforming Mars, that's like my ideal setup. And just the beginning of the game, you get those 4 Preludes, you get 10 project cards, and you have to decide, and 2 corporations that are going to determine kind of your special abilities. And you're deciding, which corporation do I want? Which 2 of these Preludes are going to support that most, and with these cards to jumpstart. It's such a satisfying decision. It gives you lots of direction to where it doesn't feel, this is not a game that feels sandboxy because you're constantly, using a lot of this information you have and then only getting 4. Well, I guess if you're drafting, you'll see more than 4 project cards go around, but you only have the opportunity to buy 4. And it just, every time I play it, we've played it quite a bit now. This one's been climbing year after year. This one keeps hitting the table. And, you mentioned it. It never, I try to think, like, what's my worst game of Terraforming Mars I had? Like, honestly, the worst I can think of is, like, I can only blame myself because I, like you did, did something. I was like, man, I really should have done that differently. But the game delivers and is, I talked about Great Western Trail feeling pretty fresh and different. Terraforming Mars gave me a little bit of that feeling when I first played it. Yes, the cards feel very similar to Race for the Galaxy, some of the other games that have all the cards, but the way it feeds into the engine building and feeds into the interaction points.
The shared board is very unique with like we're all we're all leveling up the different things together, but
and the way it opens opportunities. I mean, we like that in some other games where it's like another player doing something, it's like, ooh, there's now like a spot with 2 greeneries. Like, it'd be really nice to jump in there and get that city before somebody else does. I've loved it anywhere from, I haven't played it much 2-player, but anywhere from 3 to 5 players. It's gone well. Probably favorite playing it 3 or 4. But it's good.
And even I was just thinking the whole with those 3 tracks, the temperature, the oxygen, and the aquifers. Whichever one that goes up, if heat goes up crazy fast, and that completely changes everything for people. Because now it's like, well, if heat maxes right away, suddenly producing a ton of heat isn't
Yeah,
doing
producing
anything.
heat isn't helpful. Suddenly, all these late game cards like farming
Right.
are playable and
early.
earlier than you would have thought.
So I love just how that the way how the game goes can make it feel very different every time.
Yeah, it's my favorite games are going to tend to be a really solid, interesting system that I like interacting with that has this huge layer of variability on top of it to change how you're interacting with it. And Terraforming Mars just nails that.
Number
2.
Number 2 and 4 for us, not bad.
Yeah, that's pretty high. And did we mention you could get Terraforming Mars if you happen to be the final winner picked on the magic colored wheel? Let's jump back over there. All right, this is the final winner in our game giveaway. Thanks for everybody that entered.
Think how nervous
watching
people are
this videos.
right now. Man.
And for those of you that just jumped to this point in the video to see who won, you missed some good games we talked about.
Yeah.
But
come on,
we're
man.
so glad to have you.
You're better than that.
Still have you here. Let's give it a spin.
Here we go.
Let's see what's it gonna be. Nick Van Den B.
Congratulations.
Woo! You are our final winner in our giveaway. Congratulations. We will be likely doing this again in the future, unless we, change our minds. But we'll next year. It's kind of fun to combine it with our top list. But you know what's left, Daniel. We need to jump back and hit our number 1 games of all time. All right, Daniel. I have a feeling that neither of our number 1s are going to be surprises to each other. Though yours is new. Yours is, I think, right? Is not a previous. There's been a dethroning on Daniel's list.
Oh, I think you meant new to my list.
No, sorry. Not new to your list, but new to the number 1 crown spot.
Well, yeah, I already told you Gloomhaven dropped.
But this is going to be new to our viewers. So let's hear it.
Yeah, here we go. My number 1 board game. Like we said, it is a snapshot in time. So I can definitely, we'll see. Does this hold? Does this not? Got to play this a couple times in the last year.
Which is saying something.
Which is
to get to play it a couple times, yeah.
Yes, because it is a very long game. I think on average, we've played it in about 8 hours, but delivers the just most epic, full experience in a board game that I've had. And this goes to Twilight Imperium 4th edition. Like I said, this is a very long game. It's very hard to get to the table. You plan a day for this. It's not just a board game. This is an event. You schedule it ahead of time. And all of that sort of stuff. You have snacks and everything, but the game is unbelievable in what it delivers. So many things I like. The unique factions, the races that you get feel so different. They're very unique, and it's like, okay, how am I gonna approach this game, with this unique faction and all of that. And then the map is, we've only done you can do actually like placing the map tiles out if you want to do a little more competitive. We've just done preset maps and randomized setup and whatnot. But the map is unique, and looking at, okay, what's the best way to go? Because here's what's so interesting about Twilight Imperium is you look at it on the surface, you see all these ships in space, and your first instinct is, oh, this is just like send it out there and battle to the death.
It's a fighting game.
No. There will be fighting later. But if you do that, you will lose horribly in Twilight Imperium. This is a diplomatic game. Most of what happens on this game happens above the table, the interaction between the players, because there's just this, as everyone goes out, everyone starts exploring, and it's pretty calm at the start of the game. Everyone's kind of getting their initial planets, because your planets are what give you more resources. Each planet is interesting, has a resource value and an influence value. Resources helps you build more stuff, and influence is critical because there's going to be things to use influence for votes. So there's going to be laws or it's the agenda phase, which that doesn't come until someone occupies the center planet. But once someone gets to the center planet, Mechatol Rex, suddenly now every round there is this agenda phase. This might be the most fun part of this game because in the agenda phase, you end up doing 2 of these, and that's critical. You draw a card, and it's, like I said, a law. It's basically some thing that happens that will drastically change the game.
Yeah, it could permanently change the rules of the game. It could
permanently change a rule. It could be assigned to a player and either benefit them or hurt them a lot. And what happens is when it comes out, everyone can then, going clockwise, spends influence to vote whether they're for or against the thing that's being voted on. And so that's interesting. But then there's a second one that comes out and your influence doesn't refresh. So it's always so hard, that first one, because you're like, okay, how much do I care about this? Do I want to vote for it? Or do I want to wait? Because, I mean, that second one could be huge. And I mean, you can imagine at this point, there's so much discussion happening at the table. People arguing why this, we should vote. This is why we should vote for this, or we need to stop that player. You never want to be perceived as the leader in this game because you're going to get things voted against you. And so, there's so much just diplomacy happening and all of that. I have the Prophecy of Kings expansion, which was my number 1 expansion of our top expansions.
It's almost like our favorite expansions really elevate.
Really elevate. I know, it's because that adds so much to the game. Not only letting go up to 8 players, which I don't know what crazy person would do that, but
probably
it adds. It adds, a new unique special ship that every faction has that has kind of their own power. It fixes some of the elements where if you're playing with less than 6 players, it's got hyper lanes to help kind of balance the map. It adds, I'm like blanking on like all the things that this Prophecy of Kings
like the leader stuff, right?
Right, yeah, the leaders. It adds so much stuff to the game and just brings it to a whole another level. And it's one of those games that, honestly, a little bit like kind of what I was saying with Nemesis, but to a whole nother level of, it's a story. At the end of the night, you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, look at all that happened. And obviously, playing an 8-hour game, you got a lot of time for a lot of things to happen, but there's so much diplomacy and, okay, are we good here? And you trying to just see where can you make your moves, because here's what's so great about the game. It's not just conquer everyone else. It's all it's a victory points. It's who can get to 10 victory points first. And there's these, kind of objectives coming out that start with 1 victory point, and then they end up going to 2 victory points, which 2 victory points in a game to 10 is obviously a ton. You have some personal objectives as well that can get you a victory point. And so it's not being the most powerful. It's how can I get to 10?
It's all about whatever positioning for points.
Positioning. Yeah. How can I get to 10? And you're looking at these objectives. You're looking at everything on the board. You don't want to be the perceived leader. How can I get to 10?
Yeah.
And there's so many, there's a whole technology track, and the 4th edition does way better with this. Of the technology upgrades are just a lot simpler, but they're so powerful. I could go on and on because this game's huge, but man, it comes together and delivers this last year, I got 2 incredible Twilight Imperium games. And when I was just thinking through all my board games, and I'm like, what has given me the, I got a full, like I said, board games for me are about the experiences they deliver. And that delivered 2 full 8-hour, unbelievable, epic. And here's what's crazy. People hear 8 hours and they're like, how could you play a game that long? The game flies because you're in it the whole time. You're never, there's no downtime. You're not like, you're not bored ever. Because everything matters. Everything affects everything. And
yeah,
man, I know obviously I'm getting to play it more than you have been able to. Yeah. I think the Prophecy of Kings expansion, I would borderline call it essential. It adds so much. Adds epic planets that have powers that change things up so much. Gosh, I'm hoping I can get another chance coming up here to play this game, because wow, it delivers such a fun board game experience. This is why I love board games. So Twilight Imperium 4th edition coming in at my number 1.
Number 1. I wondered after some of those games you had if that was going to be enough to propel it all the way to the top.
Yeah, and I went invested. I upgraded stuff. The copy I got off Facebook Marketplace came with the player mat and
you got the big.
So it's really fun to pull it all out. And,
there's not a lot of games that can kind of live up to being the big full day. Like Twilight Imperium has the table presence. I mean, it just looks epic, and the systems are epic. So it's big shoes to fill fill a day that we're going to only play this one game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Ryan, we're always the longer a game is, it's got to live up to it.
Yeah,
it's and so
I could be playing a bunch of other games.
An 8-hour board game. Think how much that has to live up to, and for me, it absolutely does. I will if someone's let's play Twilight Imperium, absolutely.
It's been 4 years since I played
back-to-back games.
It fell at my 32, which is still good. That's still in my top 50.
Yeah,
but not having played it as recently and. Our gaming taste, you probably tell a little bit from just our list so far. This is even more your style of game than it is mine.
I love the social interaction of the game. So there you go.
Yes, my number 1 is not a shock and it's been hinted at in this list repeatedly. It's Agricola. Agricola is...
What can I say?
What can I say? It's been my number 1 for a long time. There was 1 year where Terraforming Mars was new, and I was hyped on it. But
for some reason, I thought Gloomhaven 1 year.
I think it was my number 2.
Maybe it was your 2. Okay.
But yeah, it is held. I first got it over a decade ago, and honestly, this year with getting the revised stuff and getting to play it a few times, I think this has only widened the gap between Agricola and anything catching it. It's hard for me to picture a game I have beating it out. It feels like if it's going to get dethroned, it's going to be something else that comes down the way. You touched on a lot of the things I love about it. We've talked about the tight worker placement. You layer on top of that the getting of these cards, that every game is a unique puzzle of powerful abilities and what combination of these am I going to use? But it's not just that strategy, because when the rubber meets the road, you're always having to change and adapt based on what's out there and where you're getting blocked and things you thought you were going to play, you maybe not. And actually this card that I thought there was no way I was going to play, actually could make sense now. And it's so dynamic that the entire time, every round, I'm just so engaged with how do I need to approach this round, to set myself up. And yes, there's people on the internet that will label this as Misery Farm, and it's, not for them.
We love it.
But
bring on the misery.
If you want your games to be kind of tight, satisfying puzzles, and then you want that to be a puzzle that you're going to get to play kind of infinitely unique, but very meaningfully different variations on because of these cards. I mean, I've played it 80 times, and each game, it's not like it's got a slow burn or anything. Because it's so different every game, it's just held.
Every game.
If anything, it's gone up because I get better at this. The more you understand the systems and the better you get at the game, it's even more fun to try to apply the cards to this system that well. It's a game we highly recommend. It's your number 2 and my number 1. I guess it's our most recommended game. It would be our top
recommendation, yeah.
But I would recommend it most to somebody who knows they're going to play a game a lot. If you can have fun, you're going to probably have fun on your first play or your second play or whatever. But where it turns into an all-time great, in my opinion, is when you're going to really invest in continually playing this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a broken record after so many years of it holding. It's amazing that, this is pretty early in the hobby we got Agricola to the hobby.
Right.
And so much has happened between now and then of researching games and new amazing games coming out. The fact that it holds is just... And it's not just like a nostalgic thing. I don't keep Agricola as my number one because I have such good feelings when we first. It's literally the game right now. It is my favorite game of any game I've played. So there you have it.
It plays well at all the player counts too. Like I play 2-player. It's great. It's obviously, I would say it's a little more fun at the, as you get a higher player
3 to
count,
4,
you unlock more of those cards. That's kind of the biggest thing, I think, and some more actions and whatnot. But it works well, I think, at all player counts. So
so we'll see. We'll see how long we're doing this channel. If we're old men on this channel someday. But does Agricola ever get dethroned? Does Agricola get dethroned?
Oh my gosh.
That's the question.
That is the question.
And that wraps up a very long video. We thank you all for watching. We would love to hear in the comments below what your favorite game of all time is, or your top 10. You've now seen a taste of what rises to the top for us. But drop that in the comments below, and we appreciate you coming along for this ride.
And like we mentioned, we've got links to our favorite games, these wonderful games, all down below. Go down there, check them out for yourself. And after you do that, we've got a couple more videos here that you can check out for yourself. We will see you in the next video.